Hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Progressives. I'm Rocco Million with Real Progressives, here with my Thursday night broadcast, 8 p.m. Today, we're going to be talking about the blue wave that we're supposed to be seeing in the upcoming midterm elections in November. So, I'm going to wait for a couple seconds for everyone to join in. It's going to be an open discussion today, so any comments you have, any questions you have, please put them on comment and talk about whatever it is that you're commenting. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I started my political journey in the interest of full disclosure. I started off as a Republican, as a matter of fact, right winger. When I was in the Navy, I voted for W twice, if you could believe that. And, I could remember using the right wing arguments, and I remember telling my mom, she is a hippie, and I told her, she was telling me how bad the war was in Iraq, the normal right wing BS. I would say, well, if we don't fight them over there, we're going to have to fight them over here. And, and she would try to tell me why that wasn't true, but I wouldn't really hear about it. And, as I got more life experience and I matured more, I learned, and I saw that a lot of the arguments I was using were faulty and they didn't really stand up to close scrutiny. Keeping the same example with, fighting them over there so we don't got to fight them over here. If you just think about that, it doesn't make sense, all right? Because people don't just wake up in one day on the other side of the world and say, I'm gonna dealing a blow to America, to killing Americans at all costs, even if I lose my own life, for no reason. People don't just wake up thinking that, all right? Now, when they see America raping and pillaging, when they see when American troops or American proxy, forces kill their families, now the conditions are ripe for extremism. Now the conditions are ripe, that radicalize people. Now they're willing to risk everything just to kill Americans, just to get back at us, even if it costs them their own lives. So the fact of the matter is, we don't need to fight them there, so we don't fight them here. We don't need to fight them at all. We need to quit terrorizing the world with for-profit imperialism. So, that's just one example of how hollow a lot of these right-wing arguments are. And so, I grew, and then I went and I became a Democrat. And I voted for Obama twice. And, and what I eventually grew to understand was that the base right-wing arguments were alive and well and even flourishing in the Democratic Party. They'll freely tell you they are capitalists through and through, and that's a good thing, So, but then and then my big change, my big awakening came, like a lot of people during the 2016 election, the primary. Okay, when Bernie Sanders was cheated, when the DNC cared more about beating the progressive wing of their own party than with beating Trump. All right, and they used a very undemocratic process to do that. They effectively ostracized us all of us progressives. And they basically spit in our face. All right. And so at that point, I couldn't no longer in good conscience be a Democrat. So I went green and I voted for Jill in the general election. And, and I would do that again in a second if the situation was the same. But, so my point is, if we only oppose Trump to empower other right-wing neoliberal Democrats, then what's the point? Nothing would change. All right, it's just controlled opposition. All right, both parties are right-wing neoliberals who put profit over people in society. All right, the Democrats, they got this little con going on where, they're supposedly the voice of the people. They supposedly represent we the people, but in reality, they may be a little bit more liberal on social issues, but as long as those social issues don't really interfere with the underlying exploitative capitalist power structures already in place, so the bottom line is, they're economically they're indistinguishable from the Republican Party, and you can't have free. I think Martin Luther King said it. You can't really be free without having economic freedom. So all the rest of it is window dressing. If you don't have equality in the economy, if we don't have democracy in the economy, then you can't really be free. And you can't be a progressive if you advocate against having democracy in the economy. All right? So, to me, it's controlled opposition. Both parties are right-wing neoliberals. They both put profit over people in society. All right. When I was a Republican, we as a country, as a government, we loved to spread for-profit imperialism. All right, and we were the biggest terrorist nation in the world by far, bigger than Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea all combined. All right, America much bigger. Under the Republican Bush, we inflicted economic terrorism by targeting unemployment. All right, that's systemically, intentionally creating systemic poverty in society. That's economic terrorism. It's austerity that kills like bullets. And also we inflicted police terror by criminalizing peaceful behavior in nature. Cops legally rape, rob, and kill people over evil flowers, all in the name of corporate profits. All right, and I always have to qualify that statement so that people understand. If a cop thinks you have a flower inside you, they could take you to the hospital and have you medically raped. There was a girl in our town, 5 hours they tortured this girl. They poked and prodded her, put her through x-rays. They knew within the first 20 minutes that she didn't have any drugs inside of her. But it was all about torturing her. They wanted to get information on her dealers. So they gave her repeated physical examinations, repeated x-rays. After 5 hours, they finally let her go. She had vaginal tearing. That's how bad this was. And she brought a federal lawsuit, and the Supreme Court, threw it out. They said if a cop thinks you have a flower inside you, it's perfectly legal to have you raped like that. And the same is true with civil asset forfeiture laws. Cops can rob you legally, They can seize your property, seize your bank accounts, take your stuff without even charging you with a crime. All right, and again, people die over weed warrants all the time. So this isn't hyperbole. These are actual facts, statements of fact. And the thing is that both parties will do it. Under Obama, we went from 2 illegal wars to 7. All right, Democrats love for-profit imperialism. Remember, they're capitalists. They freely admit it. And the only way capitalism endures is through the exploitation of others. That's the whole thing. And under Obama, they still targeted unemployment. So even the Democratic Party is completely fine with inflicting economic terrorism, creating systemic, intentional poverty. All right, that didn't change. They still, they still inflict police terror. Under Obama, the drug war raged. Sure, he pardoned some weed dealers, some weed offenders, but did he advocate against the drug war? Did he actually? He could have pardoned every nonviolent criminal. He could have pardoned, or at least pardoned every weed offender, but he didn't. And again, the Democrats are just as cozy with big oil and corporations as the Republicans. All right, look at Standing Rock. Under Obama, our water protectors were allowed to be terrorized. So, there's very little daylight between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and that's a fact. When you really look at it, you can see that. They're both right-wing parties that put profit over people in society. So, I'm really conflicted about what to do in the 2018 midterms, because as I look around, I do see some really good progressive candidates running as Democrats, but even they are, they're unwilling, they refuse to separate themselves from the neoliberal orthodoxy. They refuse to separate themselves from using the same neoliberal, right-wing neoliberal economic talking points and scare tactics that, benefit the 1% first and foremost. And as an example of that, I'll give you, like Bernie Sanders, the tax and spend narratives. He had a great platform. All right, pretty much we all can agree that his goals, were great goals, very progressive goals. But because he never took the time to actually explain our operational reality, MMT, because he used the same right-wing neoliberal talking points and scare tactics, it hurt the progressive movement, because they looked at his platform and they saw he called for $33 trillion in spending and only $19 trillion in taxes. And because he never explained the operational reality, because of that, he got the moniker Crazy Bernie, and it stuck because people didn't understand. Well, and even in the debates, Hillary Clinton, used the right-wing arguments against him. She called his policies pie in the sky, and she said, well, how are you going to pay for that? All he had to say was the same way we pay for anything, congressional appropriations. Nobody asks how you're going to pay for endless war and corporate welfare. All right, when they, and then you think about, we just need to pass hurricane relief funding. We just passed a defense bill, corporate bailouts, to get over the global financial crisis. All of these kind of things got bipartisan support because they didn't call for raising taxes. All right, when you raise people's taxes, that's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more politically challenging to get something passed because nobody wants to have their taxes raised, and it causes a lot of civic dysfunctionality. People start to hate each other in society. I'm working, I'm paying more in taxes, and I look and I see maybe a poor neighbor who is poor and he gets all the same benefits. That builds resentments, and that puts an extra fight on top of our progressive policy agenda. And so, it actually hurts us. So, people like Dr. Joe Firestone and Steve Grumbine, they call it the progressive give-up strategy. And when I look at take Bernie's healthcare bill, his version of it, he has to know that we don't need to raise taxes. He just passed a spending bill for defense. He just passed a spending bill for hurricane relief. And yet for some reason, he decides to add in pointless pay-for taxes into the single-payer bill. Well, with a Republican majority, that guarantees the bill will be DOA on arrival. Dead on arrival. There's no way you could pass that bill. And so it makes me wonder. It's almost like he's okay collecting all the social support for trying while simultaneously preserving the corporate status quo. because he knows if he adds in that tax, there's no way that the bill will pass. So, but at the same time, if you just have spending bills, even Republicans love their family. Even Republicans love their kids. So if you just have a spending bill to raise people's standard of living, there's really no, how can sane people oppose that? We, as a government, our government never needs profit or revenue to spend and operate. All right, Article 1, Section 8 mandates that government mint and tax to provide for the general welfare. So all spending is brand new dollars created by congressional decree. All right, we don't need to tax the rich to spend on society. We don't need to cut defense to spend on society. And when we think we do, we end up accepting pointless austerity that kills just like bullets until we get revenue up. It's just a bad strategy, And then you throw into the mix, on top of all of that, the DNC fraud lawsuit, Last year, the DNC lawyers, they argued in open court, and they said that DNC members have no right to democratically choose who wins their own election. Okay, so they're basically telling us, this is an opinion. They're telling us straight up, there is no democratic process. They select who they want to win, and their members be damned. So, that's right-wing fascism, you know what I mean? And if we're okay with that, if we're okay with that kind of undemocratic process, then, we should do fine under a fascist like Trump. I mean, really. So, it's kind of hard to figure out what to do because, even though there may be some good progressive candidates running as Dems, at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is a purely corporate party. It's against democracy. It hates democracy. It's all controlled opposition, with the Republican Party. The bottom line is they both serve the same corporate masters, okay? And we have to understand this, all right? There's very little daylight between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's, and I don't make the facts, so don't get mad at me. I don't make these facts. I'm just speaking it as the truth. I'm speaking the truth. Okay, don't hate truth tellers. Hate the truth and then work to change it. So, but and we didn't hear nothing about that DNC lawsuit last year. All right, you watch the news, you hear nothing about it really. You see about Russia interfering in our elections, this and that, and because of that big misdirection, that distraction, and the media blackout of the real facts, the DNC had no fear to come back during the appeal. Right now they're in court again on appeal for the same DNC fraud lawsuit, and they have no fear to double down on that fascist rhetoric. All right, and now they are actually saying they have a First Amendment right. And we don't hear about that on the news. We're hearing about Russia and how they put Trump in office. Believe me, Russia didn't change anybody's mind. All right, people had their minds made up on Hillary long before Donald Trump came along. All right, the fact of the matter is Hillary and the DNC were much more concerned with beating the progressive wing of their own party than with beating Trump. Okay, so they can't turn around and cry Trump now. All right, Hillary elevated Trump. All right, and then she cheated the only person who consistently smashed him in head-to-head matchups, Bernie. If Bernie would have ran against Trump in the general election, I don't care what Russia said. Bernie would have smashed him. So the real problem is in America. We don't need to worry about Russian oligarchs. All right, we need to worry about the American oligarchs who are in control right now. And they are killing us right now. And I get passionate about this because, in my own life, I see it all around me. I see pointless suffering and death. I go to the VA and I see veterans being, abused and neglected, when I called the VA a couple weeks ago and I needed service, I'm a disabled vet. I've had multiple spinal surgeries. I'm always in pain, both my shoulders blown out. I called the VA and I wanted Trump passed a law saying that we can see private doctors, if the VA is too far away. So I asked about that, and this is what they actually told me. They said, well, we don't have that kind of money. That would just be a waste of our resources. No, you got to come in here. And I explained, well, the only VA is a whole city away. I have no car. So how am I supposed to get there? I thought this was why we were supposed to be able to see private insurance. But that's what they told us. It's a waste of their resources to help us disabled vets. All right? And it doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. It's the same exploitive system is being, is being put on us, So, when I look around and I see, the drug war being carried out, no matter who is in office, Democrat or Republican. When I see the same when I see the same corporations getting huge tax breaks, being allowed to pollute our air, being allowed to pollute our water, for profit, no matter who is in power, Republican or Democrat. Think about it. During Standing Rock, again, under Obama, he let our water protectors be terrorized. There's no difference. They are a little bit better on, social issues, but as long as those social issues don't affect the underlying root or the underlying capitalist power structures. That's why they're all for gay rights and stuff like that, because that has nothing to do with the capitalist power structure. It doesn't cost anybody their bottom line. So yeah, they're fine with that, and that gives them popular support in which to enact their right-wing economics that really hurt us. So, until we start to understand these basic truths, we're going to keep voting against our own interests. We're going to keep shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't see any comments, though. I don't understand why that is. I wanted to get comments and start talking about different things that had to do with this, and I can't even see no comments. But anyway, so, we have to understand all of these facts. And don't get mad at me or people for speaking the truth. Again, we didn't make that the truth. We're just reporting it. All right? Because nobody else is. But the problem isn't Russia. The problem isn't Trump. All right? The problem isn't even the Democrats. The problem is the right-wing neoliberal duopoly. Okay? And so I'm thinking that the best way we can affect change is by them exiting, And if we would all just do this right now, half of the beast is weak, and we already sunk as low as we can sink. We got Trump. There's no lower we can go. We might as well, take a step back and kill the duopoly. Kill one half of the duopoly right now. Them exit. All right, and then come back in 2020 and rebuild a true labor movement, a true party, a true labor party that represents the bottom income distribution first and foremost, because trickle-down economics doesn't work. And just because you have a D in front of your name doesn't make trickle-down economics any better. All right, targeting the middle income distribution is still trickle-down economics. All right, and demand naturally travels up. When you give money to the bottom, they have to spend it. They have needs immediately. You give money to the top, they've had money all along. They just put it in the savings. Of course, the spending at the bottom is going to help our economy a lot more. So when we guarantee the jobs at a bottom income distribution, because they make up the largest segment of society, the more dollars that they have, the more they demand and guarantee the jobs that are skilled and educated above them. Just simple logic. Demand travels up. It don't trickle down. So we have to demand the change we want to see. All right? And the only way we're going to do that is by understanding our actual macroeconomic reality. Because all problems in society have their economic roots and they have their macroeconomic solutions. So once we understand our operational reality, MMT, then we understand that things like unemployment, poverty, even imperialism are just political choices. They're not operational necessities. All right? Then we won't accept economic terrorism. We won't accept the progressive give-up strategy. We won't accept it because we know it's bullcrap. Government can always create dollars by congressional decree from thin air to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare. All right? We don't need to tax the rich. We don't need to cut the fence. Government always has the same exact spending power, infinite, regardless of federal revenues, regardless of the exchange rate, regardless of the markets, foreign or domestic. Government always can buy anything for sale in dollars. So, and again, that's right in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8. It mandates government mint and tax to provide for the general welfare of society. And so, government doesn't need revenue. It's right there. That's the whole point. Government doesn't need money. The money part of the equation doesn't matter. That's infinite. The only thing that matters is we have the real resources available to buy with that money. So, in the case of single-payer healthcare, if we have the real, or any program, if we have the real resources to meet the demand for any program, we can always afford that program without raising taxes, without making cuts, and it'll always be non-inflationary spending. So, in simpler terms, if we're talking about healthcare, single payer, if we have the real resources to meet the demand for single payer, if we have the doctors, the hospitals, the medicine to meet the demand for single payer, which we do, then we can always afford it without raising taxes, without making cuts, and it'll always be non-inflationary. So there's no need to put in, pointless taxes into a single payer bill, because we actually do have the real resources. We already cover everybody through the ER. It's just a lot less efficient. It's a lot less humane. All right? We know that we pay more than every other nation and we get less. All right? Single payer would actually be deflationary. It would lower costs. We would actually spend less on healthcare and get better results. So, there's absolutely no reason that we have to tax to spend, or we have to cut to spend. We have to understand our operational reality. The fact is, government don't need profit or revenue. Government can always satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare simply by creating dollars by congressional decree and spending on the general welfare. That's government's job. Government don't need money. It needs real resources. So government taxation, it creates unemployment. So government can provision the general welfare of society with real resources using using paid employment. So that's the whole deal. Taxation in dollars is just a social construct. It's a means of production. Dollars are just a law to satisfy tax. We can't run out of laws, so we can't run out of dollars. All right? And once we understand this stuff, we can defeat all the silly right-wing lies with simple common sense and logic. All right? Because, like I was just saying, whatever argument they use, we can use the knowledge of our operational reality to defeat those talking points with simple logic. So, and we have to call out even the people we like. All right, people like Bernie Sanders. When we see he's using the same right-wing neoliberal talking points and scare tactics, as the Republicans, we need to call him out. Nobody is bigger than this movement. Hero worship isn't going to save lives. All right, people are actually dying out here. People are suffering. I just saw a bridge just collapse today. All right, that is austerity. That's why we say austerity kills just like bullets, because it really freaking does. This is why, Steve Grumbine says austerity is murder by proxy, because it is. All right, and people were saying, "Oh, well, that bridge was brand new. It wasn't austerity." Do you even understand what austerity is? All right, austerity. It means that there was less workers working on the bridge. It means that those workers were less experienced. It means that they use substandard materials for the bridge. All right, there's the whole thing. All right, they don't put in, and plus they're privatizing our infrastructure, and then they deregulate everything. All right, this is austerity. It's all a combined thing, And so, once we understand our operational reality, we don't accept that anymore. We don't accept those baseless positions. We could see right through them, and we could defeat them with simple logic. So my thing with the DNC is, they don't even pretend to represent us anymore. They just, after what happened in 2016, you would think that they would reevaluate their whole platform. You would think that they would fear their base a little bit more. But we see the exact opposite. They have this air of superiority that they think, they can do whatever they want, and we're going to vote for them because the alternative is too scary. Well, guess what? It's all the same. Yeah, when it comes down to it, the bottom line is both parties are right-wing neoliberals. They both put profit over people in society. So we have to defeat the neoliberal duopoly. We have to dem exit. All right? We sit out this election. Let the Dems get smashed. Forget a blue wave. If we have a blue wave coming in November, it's going to hurt us, not help us. All right? Then 2020 is the same way. We're not going to have no progressives running. We're not going to have no progressive movement in the Democratic Party. All right? We have to break their back now. And we're already at the bottom. We can't sink no lower. We got Trump. There's no lower. We can't get no lower. This is the time. Right now, we got to throw out the strategy of voting for the lesser evil. This is what got us here. All right? The lesser evil has fucking killed us. For years and years and years, it left us with evil people. This isn't complex. All right? We need to be Americans. We need to, have some pride, have some dignity. And, vote out of love, not out of fear. We need to vote the greatest good. And, the Green Party, I love them. I love their platform. But even they use the same right-wing neoliberal economics and scare tactics. Right in their platform, they call for a balanced budget amendment. And that's straight economic terrorism. All right? When you run a trade deficit like we do in America, that means the foreign sector is always in surplus. They're making a surplus on us. All right? So if we run a balanced federal budget at that point, that means by accounting identity, our domestic private sector must be in deficit. That's bad stuff. That means we got to drain our savings and use private credit just to live. And that because private credit always dries up, that leads to booms, busts, and bailouts that only help the rich. And government got to move into a huge deficit position anyway to help the rich. So instead of calling for a balanced budget amendment, a real progressive party would call for enough deficit spending to replace all the different leakages in our economy. When I say leakages, I mean like money leaving our economy. When we're buying products from other countries like China, they're getting our dollars. Those dollars are leaving our economy. So our government has to replace that leakage. All right, when we're spending money to the top, the rich people put their money in savings accounts. That's out of the economy. That's a leakage. So our government needs to resupply that money. So in simpler terms, when we're running a trade deficit, our government needs the deficit enough to cover the foreign sector surplus and still put our domestic private sector in surplus. All right? So this is why our operational reality is so important, because if you call for a balanced budget, that's austerity. There's no way that's a progressive policy. When we run a trade deficit, our federal budget needs to always be in deficit, to cover that and to put us into surplus. So, and the other thing is, so many people want to focus on the Federal Reserve. They want to pass legislation to stop the fractional reserve lending. Fractional reserve lending doesn't exist since 1934 when we got off the domestic gold standard. All right? We have federal deposit insurance now. Okay? Banks don't lend out reserves. They don't lend out deposits. Banks can't, monetary policy and banks, they can't even create net dollars. What they do is they stretch the money supply. They can't create new net dollars. They got to work with the net money supply that Congress appropriates and makes through spending bills. So, monetary policy, it can't add net dollars to the economy. Only deficit spending can. So, and then the people that are against the Fed, they're against federal deficit spending. Not understanding our operational reality. If you oppose federal deficit spending, the only other option to balance our economy is monetary policy of the Federal Reserve and private credit. The very thing that they say they're against to begin with. And so they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. They don't even realize it. And then you try to tell them about our operational reality, and they say that, we're supporting capitalism. They say that MMT is a psyop. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic, because people are actually dying in the balance. People are dying in the meantime. So until while people, sit laurels and they at us who are actually making sense, people are dying in the meantime for no reason. Government can always buy up all unemployment. Government can fully fund all public purpose programs without raising taxes, without making cuts. That's government's job, the general welfare, not the private. Government isn't in business to make profit for the capitalist class. That's fascism. So anyway, I really wanted to take some questions from you guys and have a deeper conversation about different issues, but I don't know why my comment section isn't working. So I'm going to have to just go back through and then, answer them after the broadcast. So, but anyway, that's all I got. Please, guys, think about this stuff. Make sure you follow Deficit Owls and Real Progressives on all the social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, even MeWe and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you look up the true revolutionaries, the true truth tellers like Dr. Stephanie Kelton, Dr. Bill Mitchell, Steve Grumbine, Ellis Winningham, Dr. Joe Firestone, Dr. Fidel Kaboub, Dr. Pavlina Chanova, all these different people. These are the people speaking truth. These are the people that are speaking truth to power. They're not afraid of the ruling class, all right? And they're not, they're telling the truth. So go look these people up. dive into the material. MMT is counterproductive only at first, because how we think of our household budget has nothing to do with our federal budget, because our government makes dollars by decree at will. We can't do that. So if you simply just dive into the material, you can overcome any cognitive dissonance that you may have, because it's just simple logic. All right? Most people do understand this stuff once they look into it. Please do yourself a favor, do your kids a favor, do our nation a favor. All right? Learn our operational reality, MMT. Each one teach one. If we don't do this, nobody will. All right? We can't wait for Bernie to say it's okay. We can't wait for, the top to do it, because they're not going to. The last thing the ruling class would want is for the population to understand government can always create dollars by congressional decree to satisfy its mandate to the general welfare. All right, because then we wouldn't accept pointless austerity that kills just like bullets. Then we wouldn't accept economic terrorism. Then we wouldn't accept intentional poverty, intentional unemployment. So please understand, and even it goes into even police terror. I don't want to get all back into that, but a lot of the police terror is caused by policing for profit. Public purpose is underfunded, so that police departments too. Police departments all over America are underfunded, so they have to engage in policing for profit to stay operational. If you fully fund the public purpose, that no longer is the case. Police departments should be fully funded. And we need to stop criminalizing peaceful behavior in nature as well. We need to stop inflicting economic terrorism. We need to, instead of targeting unemployment, we have to target full employment. Our deficit should correspond to whatever full employment is. This isn't complex, again. So, I think we all need to dem exit. We need to send a strong message in 2018 that it isn't business as usual. There's a new generation coming up, and we're thinking about things a little bit different. And we're not going to accept the same BS that our parents did and our grandparents did. No, we're done with that. We're going to demand that our government do its job and satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare, first and foremost. All right? And we're not going to let up. And we're not going to be bullied, and we're not going to be conned out of fear to vote for evil. All right? The lesser evil narrative is all washed up. We're not falling for that bull anymore. So if you guys in the Democratic Party can't get it together, we will go elsewhere. We will. All right. Take it easy, guys. Thanks a lot. Tune in to Dr. Joe Firestone. He's coming up right next at 9 p.m. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Please share this. Take it easy.